Hi, welcome back to Healing Medicine as part of the LinkedIn interview series. We're talking with healthcare professionals to provide them with discussions around health and healing that they may have never heard before. So, we're talking about resources for seeing yourself as a healer, for healing your own trauma, burnout. We've talked to healthcare professionals from all walks of life. And so today I'm very excited to welcome our special guest, Dr. Stephanie Burgos from Embodied Healing. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Absolutely. So we actually connected on Instagram. So I love the work that you're doing with embodiment, and you are classically trained as an ER physician. But
Yes,
talk to me a little bit about your own healing journey and what does healing mean to you?
absolutely. So I've been on a healing, I would say I've been on a healing journey for almost a little over 9 years. And I say that because it's been in steps, as I always think a healing journey is in steps. And so about 9 years ago, and actually this actually started when I was in residency. When I was in my medical residency, I was a resident up in Boston and I needed an outlet. I always told myself, one of the things I told myself when I went into medicine, especially as an emergency medicine physician, I told myself that I would never let medicine take over my life. That was the promise that I made to myself. And so in residency, when it's busy and we're working, 70, 80 hours a week and it's just hectic, at the time I was like, okay, what can I do, for myself? At the time I was overweight. I was very fatigued. I suffered a lot from imposter syndrome, very greatly. Actually, imposter syndrome, I would say, plagued me probably the
Wow.
majority of my adult life up until about a year and a half ago. Like it's just been such, and even to be honest, probably less than that. It's just been such a journey, and that in itself. But at the time, I actually, when I was a resident, I started, working on myself with my physical body. I started an online account on Instagram. I started sharing my wellness journey, and it was really an outlet for me at the time and a way for me to really come back home to myself. And so I started first by really paying attention and giving time to my physical body through exercise, through yoga, but mainly just, at home workout programs. And also anytime that I was able to, just going for walks outside. So I really started first with the physical body. Then I started moving on to nutrition, really in layered steps, because I feel like when we are on a healing journey and we decide we want to make a change, we try to do too much at once, right? And those of us who are in healthcare, we're like overachievers. So we're like, okay, what do we need to do? And we're just like, what's the checklist, right? And like, what are the parts that we need to master? And we try to do too much. And the thing with healing is that it's just such an individual process. And there is, so much that we need to be able to, really, feel and really, really deprogram within ourselves. And that takes time, right? So I started with the physicality aspect. I then moved on to nutrition, realized how much I was an emotional eater, just because of all the stress, especially after a long 12-hour shift, if it was crazy, the first thing especially it's crazy, I didn't have time to eat. I didn't have time to go to the bathroom. And, many of you understand that life. And it's like, at the end of the day, all I wanted was like some ice cream. So it's like, I just wanted some ice cream, and there happened to be an ice cream shop open on my way to my apartment in Boston. So it was just something I always used to kind of, really, soothe myself with. So I started, really being mindful of my nutrition. I really started cleaning up my nutrition. And that took me, I stayed with that for a long time in terms of, when I say stay with that, in terms of just mastering my habits, new habits, creating new habits, getting back on track, because it was a lot of, I would be consistent for a significant amount of time, then I would fall off track, and then I would get back on track. So that took a little bit of time. Then I moved on to kind of working on my mindset. realizing that, you know what, it's time for me to work on my mindset. I started going to personal development events, went to Tony Robbins, you know, started listening to Audible books. You know, every single time I would listen, you know, if any opportunity where I was in the car or if I was commuting to work, I would listen to Audible books, really, you know, and really just be mindful of what I was putting into my mind, right? What was I taking in, you know, when it came to the media and the words and the sounds and the music that I was letting into my awareness. So you know, I that was my next step, you know, kind of working on my mindset, working on my limiting beliefs, working on feeling worthy enough, feeling enough. You know, I struggled a lot with, you know, just kind of getting into medical school, you know, becoming a doctor. So a lot of that really, those wounds from that, and just kind of all of those, all of those fears and all of those limits, like those limiting thoughts, those negative thoughts that we continue to tell ourselves really plagued me for a long time. So I had to really work a lot on reprogramming my mind at an unconscious level, at the subconscious level. And, you know, and so I continued with that. I did affirmations, I did visualizations. I did, you know, I was like, you know, talking to myself in the mirror. I was doing, you know, I was doing it all. I was, you know, I was on the path. And then I would say maybe end of 2018, I was sitting in this was after residency. I was already a full-time attending. I was sitting in my house, you know, beautiful home with my husband. And I realized that I was still unhappy. And I realized that I was still unfulfilled. And I was still comparing myself. I had built a business, an online business. I was a full-time attending. I had, you know, a beautiful dream home that I had always wanted. I had an amazing marriage, super supportive marriage, great friends. I had it all from the outside. And yet I was unfulfilled. I was still waiting for what's next. I was still saying, I will be happy when. I will be happy when I have this much money. I will be happy when I'm seen by this many people. I will be happy, all of these, like, I will be happy when. And I sat there and I just started crying. And I just said, you know, I was comparing myself. I still wasn't feeling enough. And I was just like, something is not right. Something's not right here. I know a lot. I know what I should be doing. I know how I should be thinking, but I haven't brought it into my body. I haven't really, you know, I haven't become it. I'm still, you know, dealing with my negative, you know, my negative limitations and my thoughts. And so in that moment, something told me, like, I heard a voice. It was like, I heard a voice, and it was just like, you're looking outward, and it's time for you to look inward. And it was in that moment that I looked at my husband and I said, I know what I need to do. I need to go inside. I need to connect spiritually, whatever that means for me. I need to really connect with myself, and I need to change my habits, and I need to stop, you know, looking outside of myself, and I need to focus on looking within. And it was in that moment that I made a couple decisions. I switched my workouts from HIIT and strength training to yoga. So I went from, you know, HIIT and strength training, like, you know, go to yoga. I also made a goal to really focus on meditation. And I had always known, I'm like, oh, I know I should do meditation. They talk about it. I should. But also I was someone that my mind was always racing. And so I was just like, I could never do that. I could never do that. And I was just like, the only time my mind shuts off is when I'm sleeping and when I'm getting a massage. And that is it. And so I was always like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. And people used to always tell me, like, you're the individual that meditation helps the most. And I was like, you're right. You know, looking back in hindsight, they were 100% right. But I made that commitment. I made those changes. And then also at the time, so I first started, you know, with yoga. I started with meditation. I also, at that time, it was really challenging too, because I felt like, in a way, I had lived my life with so much drive. I had lived my life with so much passion, and it was all externally. It was all about output. What can I output? How can I energetically, how can I output into the world? And I wasn't giving to myself. And so in that moment, there was an energetic shift that I didn't realize in that moment, but it was very profound, in which that fire that I had, that I was using to project out, shifted where I would be projecting it inward. And that was life-changing in both positive and negative ways, because in a way, I lost myself. In a way, the drive that I had was gone.
Yeah.
The passion that I had was gone. It was like I didn't know who I was anymore. And as I started to go deeper into this healing journey of, and really that fire, the way that I describe it to people and to my clients, it's like I took that fire and I turned it inward so that I can really light up the inner closet, or really light up, and really, or the inner ocean is either the inner ocean or the inner closet, however people want to kind of think about it. But it's just our inner thoughts, our subconscious thoughts, everything that we've been holding on to, everything that we really haven't been looking at, that we've been so distracted by the outside and we haven't had a chance to look at. And so I was on this journey. And so on this journey for 2.5 years, 2.5 years of just going inward and going incredibly deep. And I, in terms of the yoga, I got my yoga teacher training. I was like, I'm a very immersive type of learner. So I was like, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to go. I went to Hawaii, got a yoga teacher certification, and it was beautiful. I had an amazing time. I also became a breathwork facilitator because breathwork was also very life-changing to me. I went to Costa Rica to do plant medicine. That was that also was just life-changing for me as well. And so I started really, utilizing these more holistic tools, yoga, the meditation, breath work, and then going back to the indigenous medicinal plants. And in that process, that's where I've lived in the last 2.5 years of really doing a lot of deep inner work, really looking at what is the root, of why I am the way I am. What are the masks that I have been putting on in this life? What is it that Stephanie desires, not what is it that society wants me to desire or my family wants me to desire, but what is it that Stephanie wants to desire? And in order for us, in order for someone to really understand that, you have to see yourself. You have to know yourself. You have to remove all the layers and all of the deep, deep programming that we have been conditioned with, and have the courage, because it takes great courage. The path of healing takes great courage, because it really requires you to look at your life and really question everything, and to be willing to think outside the box, and to be willing to be different than your family and your friends, to be willing to be different than who you've been for the last 35 years, where I was at that point, and so, it was just this journey of just coming home to myself, coming home to a deep understanding of who I am and, what I desire. And in that process, really understanding, what healing is. Healing to me is really about, returning to wholeness. It's about, returning to our natural, healthy blueprint that I believe is within every genetic DNA. Our body knows how to be healthy. Our body knows how to be healthy. We just have to get out of the way. We have to allow nature to do what it needs to do, but we have to be, we have to understand more and connect with the body. And so in the yoga, that allowed me to connect deeper with my body through breath work, connecting deeper, really being present in my body, right? Because a lot of the times, or I would say a lot of people are disconnected from their body. They're not, they're living more in their mind. They're living more in their thoughts. They're worried about they're thinking about the past. They're worried about the future. They're worried about the next project. They're worried about their bills. They're worried about the next vacation. They're worried, everything is up here. But then we forget about what's down here. We forget about the connection that we have to our body. And one thing that I realized during my own healing journey, and this is something that I tell my patients, I bring a little bit of, I bring as much holistic medicine that I can to the ER, but I really do believe that, dis-ease, misalignment, dis-ease in that we are seeing is really rooted in, I call it like emotional repression. I call it, it's the emotional body. And I feel like when we are at a point where we can, like, science can see the emotional body, we're going to really see how overweight the emotional body is, or how, cloudy, or how, how dense it is, as I would say. And, a big part of my journey has been about really dropping into the body, being present to what comes up. When I have certain feelings, allowing myself to feel them, allowing myself to express them. And this is exactly what embodiment is to me. Embodiment means that you are present, you're living in the present moment, and you are allowing whatever is coming through in that present moment. When it comes to feeling, you're allowing it to come through your body, and you have the courage to feel it. Because to me, the human experience really is about feeling. We are here to feel. And in my opinion, life is 50% pleasure, 50% pain. And I didn't say suffering, but it's 50% pleasure, 50% pain. And yet, in our nature is more, we're always going towards pleasure, and we're always resisting pain. But it's understanding that, it's about both. It's about both. And so it's just been this, like, this very deep journey of really understanding, myself, and through understanding myself and through healing myself, really having a better idea about where dis-ease really comes from, and where, and how to really start working with individuals to help them drop out of the mind and into the body, so they can start feeling, they can start somatically releasing, they can start integrating all of these repressed traumas, all of these repressed feelings that are not just ours, but also passed on generationally, in terms of generational trauma and generational programming, because that is in the DNA, that is found in the genetic, in the genetic blueprint. And it's like, when there are those of us who are called to healing, there are those of us in our family that we're like, we're all of a sudden called to healing. And when you do medicinal medicines from, the indigenous, and you do some of these more holistic, medicines, they really drop you into a different level, like a different reality. They bring you into a different dimension where you can really see the interconnectedness between what's going on in your family line, but also what's going on presently. And so yeah, that's a little bit about kind of my healing journey.
Yeah, I think, a couple things you said there are super relatable to people who have kind of gone through the trauma of pharmacy school or medical school, where you are told who you should be, how you should act, maybe even going back to people that have religious trauma or sexual trauma, or the oppression of women. I mean, you're talking about ancestral healing, ancestral traumas. Look at, not too many generations back, and you and I would not be able to
100%.
be in the positions that we are. So realizing that in the greater scheme of things, that progress is actually coming fairly quickly. But I really also like what you said about removing the masks.
Yes.
So if you feel like you don't belong in healthcare, might be time to take a look inside and show yourself compassion.
Yes.
Show yourself some love.
Yes.
Give yourself that dose of love and care and attention that you may not have gotten since childhood. There may still even be that I use the word trauma, little t trauma. So we're talking about just those things that, whenever I raised my hand in class and I spoke up, the other kids got jealous and called me smarty pants. So I started kind of like dimming my light. I started kind of dumbing down my answers. I started to not shine as brightly as I knew I could. So I love what you said about removing those masks to just become the person that you're meant to be.
Absolutely, because every single individual has an individual, blueprint, has an individual purpose, and I like to say, and other people say, we all have our own individual medicine that we're meant to, to really bring and birth into this world. And, I really, what you just said, I never felt that I belonged in medicine. I never felt that I fit in medicine. And I say in medicine, in the medicine that was shown to me, the
Right.
medicine that I lived, right? That reality of that medicine. But just because, and that's just one reality. And that's something like, especially if there are those listening who are like, I just don't feel like I fit in, or, I'm not into academic, I'm not into academics. I'm not into research. I'm not, I don't want this to take over my life. Like, I'm just, it's just, recognizing that, if you're in medicine, then most likely you're a healer. You're a healer, you're a guide in some capacity, and it's understanding that there is, that medicine is not just the medicine that we see in Western medicine, right? There's like so much that we can learn, about, what other types of medicines are out there. And to be honest, like, I believe the ultimate medicine is like love. Love is the ultimate medicine, right? And which is not something that we see in our healthcare as like being touted as like, this is the medicine, and, love and laughter and joy, and believing in yourself and loving yourself and having compassion for yourself, like you just said, and having grace and, having no judgment, and realizing that everyone is on their life path, and recognizing that we're all here, really just doing the best that we can. So yeah, it's just really, it's just really interesting.
I think that, this has been such a great conversation. You also said something about the intelligent design of the body, and recognizing when we're getting in the way of what our body knows how to do. I mean, our body is of intelligent design, no matter what your spiritual alignment is. I think all paths lead to, I think we're all talking about the same thing.
Me too.
Whether you which religious affiliation you associate with. I kind of feel that consciousness and spirituality is an ascension of that. So when we're talking about getting back to source, getting back to the the divine intelligence of the body, figuring out how do we harness that design? Because if we think about it that way, then really all humans have the capacity for healing. They all have the capacity to heal themselves. It's in our DNA, and looking at really being the bridge between Eastern and Western medicine, because these Eastern medicines, and I'm using Eastern, kind of ancient medicines, are also part of our DNA. They evolved with us as a species. So for modern medicine that's only really been around in the last century, to say this is the only way, this is where the evidence is.
I was just about to start talking about that. Yeah.
We can also say, well, maybe there's no evidence because there's been no money put towards doing the research to uncover the evidence. Maybe the evidence needs to be experiential. So how do you recommend a healthcare professional begin this journey of experiencing that wholeness, that embodiment? What would your recommendation be?
Well, first, I would recommend starting with your body. And so, and what I mean by that is, and I hate to say it, this sounds so cliche. It really does. When I say starts with the body, you have to exercise, you have to get out into nature, it's about getting out into nature, moving your body every single day, reducing the amount of processed foods, sugary foods, caffeine that you are taking into your body, because that all clogs your body. I think one of the first, I actually think if I could, one of the best things someone can do to really start clearing their temple and really making themselves a little bit more clear is looking at their nutrition, is reducing sugar, or eliminating sugar completely. And when I say sugar, meaning eliminating added sugars, because, fruits and vegetables, that's natural, naturally made, sugars, those are fine, but it's really removing the processed foods, the fast foods, the things that are not, created by the earth. I tell my patients all the time, is it created by the earth or is it created in a factory? That's how you know what you should be eating. So I would say, starting there, starting with your nutrition, starting with, making a daily commitment to yourself, committing to connecting with yourself. One of the things that I teach my clients when they work with me in my embodied healing program is setting up a daily routine, a daily self-care routine about really coming in and first thing in the morning and connecting with yourself, being with yourself, right? Because if we've been just like on autopilot, living our life, and we want to heal the body, we haven't even made the time to connect with the body. And I actually believe, I kind of like to think of it like this. This may sound I like to think of it like this. I think of the body as like its own avatar. So I tell people, imagine that you saw another body next to you, like you saw a replica of yourself right here. There's a replica of you right here. This is the body, and this is you, the mind. I'm the mind, this is the body. So there's this connection. Right now, we're focused here, we're living our life here. This is where all our energy is surging through, is where all our focus is in. And our body here is just feeling neglected. Our body is feeling neglected. It's feeling, unloved. It's feeling shamed. It's feeling angry. It's feeling all of these things. And so when you start by just being aware, just, making the time in the morning and saying, I'm going to connect to the body, sitting in a silent meditation for 5 minutes. One of the things I started doing when I first started is I would get to work 10 minutes early, and I would sit in my car and I would do 5 minutes of meditation, and I would just do it in my car. It doesn't have to be this complicated, kind of practice, because something to understand is that your body will understand that it will understand your intention of trying to at least make that connection. Even if it's 2 minutes of, taking beautiful deep breaths in and out, that intention that you connected, your body will recognize that and will love you for that. And so it's about first really connecting with the body. And, because if you want the body to, because once you make that connection, there comes a point where there's going to be like I call it like because right now the circuitry between the two are not flowing right. So when we make that connection, that flow is going to move so much more effortlessly and so much more easily. And then at that point, I always tell people there's a point where there is no point of no return, because your life completely changed, because now you've gotten your body on board. And now, which I believe the body is your greatest guide. Your body is the same way, like our physical body is made of the same constituents that are of earth, right? So we are of earth. And so just the way mammals and animals are able to sense when something bad is about to happen, in the environment, we have that same capacity. We have that same technology. It's just that we're shut off and we're not connected, but we are of this earth. And that's another thing too. It's like and a big reason as to why, if you want to heal yourself and you want to connect with yourself better, it's imperative that you connect with nature. It's imperative that you go out into nature, right? I heard once recently, right, like that the indigenous people, and this has nothing to do with it, I'm just putting this out here because I think this is such a good lesson. The indigenous people look at nature as mama, Pachamama, as mother. We in the developed society look at nature as natural resources. We look at it as resources, which means that it's for us. And it's for us to take. We look at it as real estate, as if we can just own it and take it. And that is where the disconnect starts, right? Many, many years ago, when that started coming into our psyche, sorry, I'm going like on a soapbox here, but that is where our disconnection started, because our body is its own globe. Our body is its own planet. That connection that we have to our body is the same connection we have to our earth. So the best thing I can tell you is connect with your body, look at your nutrition, look at how you're, making a little bit of time for yourself in the morning, and then move. And then from there, you move on to meditation, you move on to breath work, try sound healing in your local community, look for resources. There's so much, there's so many resources. It's just becoming aware of them. And then watch, once you're aware and you bring them into your awareness, you're going to see all these things popping up. You're going to see all these like opportunities popping up, and then it's up to you to make a different choice and say, you know what, I am going to think differently. I'm going to try something different. And so, and the other thing I wanted to say is that when it comes to healing, and it's like you were just saying, like the thing is that we're very evidence-based, which is very in the physical, but that's one part of the universe, of nature. There is the metaphysical, there's the spiritual side, there's the energetic side, right? Like the physical is just one small component, yet that is where our focus is. And that is not the end all be all. And so, you know, when you're on this path of healing, I encourage you to think differently. You know, and unfortunately in our culture, there's a lot of pessimism. There's a lot of, you know, fear. There's a lot of, you know, well, this isn't going to work, or I'm afraid this isn't going to work, or, you know, and I'm just like, well, what if it does? What if it does work? Right? Why don't you think that instead of thinking this is not going to work? There's no evidence for this. This is, you know, this is ridiculous. This is where the science shows. And it's like, but what if you chose to think differently, right? Because as you think, as you create, right? Like your reality is a reflection of your thoughts and your mindset. So
I think, you know, and we were talking before we started recording around what can people really do to start facilitating this change in healthcare. So we're talking about, you know, the United States is number one. We lead the world in healthcare spending, but we are like number 37 in healthcare outcomes, and just ahead of really third world countries. Some third world countries are ahead of us in terms of healthcare outcomes. So I think that it's important to begin having these conversations about what are you, you know, actually using as a healthcare professional? What are the things that have helped you the most? And really treating it with a beginner's mind, with you know, a playful attitude of like, I don't really know what to expect, but I can go into this sound healing bath, whatever that means, with an open mind, and just being open to the experience. And I think people think, you know, there's going to be this like sudden aha moment or this like big shift, but bodily energy is so subtle. I mean, we can't perceive our own electromagnetic pulses, but a piece of equipment, a very sensitive tool, would be able to perceive the electromagnetic pulse of our hearts from 6 feet away. So there is evidence there for electrical energy in the body and for energy movement in the body. And really, emotions, I've heard as described as kind of a continuum of the energetic reflexes that are happening in our energetic body. So Stephanie, I love what you're doing. Thank you so much for being a part of this discussion. I think these discussions are what it's going to take for professionals to take back control of the healthcare system and be able to direct it in a way that, you know, we've been there and we've tried the protocol driven, very mechanical approach. You know, you're diagnosed with X condition, so you're given Y medication. And I myself have a healthy respect, you know, near reverence for pharmaceutical medications, but I also don't see many people ever get off of them. So the question that the Healing Medicine newsletter and these interviews really raises is, what is healing? So I appreciate you sharing your healing journey. I appreciate you, you know, being an advocate for complementary, holistic, and alternative methods of healing. How can people who want to learn more about your programs and connect with you? I know you do one-on-one work with people. How can they find you and get more information?
Absolutely. They can, and you can find me over on Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn, but mostly over on Instagram is the best way. At Healthy ER Doc is where I am, is exactly how it says, Healthy ER Doc. And, but yeah, so people can work with me in on a one-on-one capacity. I have a curriculum called Embodied Healing. And so that's about a 6 to 8 month, container that we create where we're really going in depth into what's going on in the different energy centers of your body, and really giving you the tools on how to really free up that energy, really move that energy through movement and vocalization. So it's very much about like really bringing it into the body. I also do breath work. And those are the main two ways that, you know, I work with individuals at this time.
Absolutely. And we'll put those links at the bottom of this interview series as well. So thank you so much for being here, audience. Thank you so much for joining us. If you want to get access to our healing medicine interview series, it's going to be happening on LinkedIn Live all summer long. All you have to do is subscribe to the LinkedIn Healing Medicine newsletter, where we're having discussions with healthcare professionals who are thinking differently about healing and reinventing the practice of medicine. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will see you again next time.